We shall wait for another 2 minutes and start the session.
Sure. Would Dr. Muthu first kick off the session, Sumitra, or we get started directly?
So we can get started, sir. Just a small introduction and we can get started, sir.
Okay, sure. So Dr. Muthu
Yes,
will
sir.
do that, right? Okay.
Oh, yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for your participation. I'm Harshni from HTIZ's MedTech Incubator hosting the session. Before moving into the session, I would like to set some guidelines so that the speaker is not interrupted in between. Participants kindly go on mute, and if any queries, you can post it in the chat box, which can be discussed post-presentation. So the topic for today's webinar is ensuring product security for medical devices, and the two speakers for the day are Mr. Radha Ramanan Hariharan, MD and Principal Consultant at Maruti Quality Management Services, and Mr. Mukund K. Kulkarni, SME Security at Maruti Quality Management Services. Over to you, sir.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I will just share my screen. Just let me know once you can
Yes,
see
sir.
it. I hope you can see the screen and you can hear me clearly.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with the MTI team and the wonderful group of startups that are being incubated there. It gives us great pleasure to share some of our thoughts on the, I think it's a very important subject on the product security, especially in the medical device context. So Mukund and myself would just walk you through a few presentations that we have here. And we'll of course open up the floor for question and answers very specific that you may have with respect to your own product development. So I think very briefly on myself, basically have 25 years of experience largely in the quality and management system arena. And I founded this firm, so you can say it was a startup 11 years ago, but focusing on indeed process and product quality consulting. So Mukund, a quick introduction of yourself.
Hello.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, your screen is not available, sir. We are not able to see your screen.
Okay, let me try to share again. 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir, we are able to see. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I've been working mainly on the healthcare domain. So I got around 20 plus years of experience. Basically, I'm an engineer in electrical and electronics, after which I had been working in healthcare companies. I was in Philips for almost around 8 years, and then I was working in Allscripts. And then currently I have been working in MQMS, and here we have been supporting a lot of startups, mainly in the healthcare domain. And I've been mainly focusing on the healthcare privacy and security domain, and also some of the implementations like 13485.
Great. So getting right into the subject, today's agenda, we'll be looking at the context of privacy and security in the healthcare arena. We of course have a lot of challenges, and several folks who are the service providers over here. We'll also look at the commonly used terms like PIA and PHI, and how that flows into the product requirements. And most importantly, we'll be touching upon how we can actually implement these requirements in medical devices, and look at some of the best practices with respect to privacy and security risk management using the frameworks like NIST, and a short conclusion onto exactly what we need to do with respect to our healthcare products that we are developing. And of course, we'll have the floor open for question and answers. So very quickly, privacy and security breaches are more and more sort of, you can say increasing over the days. I'm sure you've been reading in the papers also. Very specific to the healthcare scenario, we have quite a few interesting scenarios here. I think in general, one important aspect is that while we try to improve efficiency of systems and displays and availability of our systems, it also has a lot of issues with respect to privacy. So the first case is very clearly on moving things to cloud and having open calendar sort of a system that was thrown open to the public, but folks were able to actually really see other people's data that they're not supposed to see. So basically, that's a clear privacy violation there. So similarly, this is a classic case, of a laptop being stolen, and controls that are required to keep our data secure in the portable machines. We have laptops, mobile phones. It's an ever-increasing aspect because many of our apps are actually now coming onto the phones also, and of course, laptops perhaps will disappear after a few years, and we'll have bigger and more powerful mobile phones. And all doctors want everything now in their phones to actually check on the patient's records, and while they're driving or when they're actually in the moving from one hospital to the other hospital, etc. The third case very clearly was a lot of vulnerabilities come in due to the exposure of the data. So here this is a proper case of access controls and a proper administrative procedure at the organization level. And the case of Anchorage, very clearly, lack of proper policies and having these requirements not built in, and the Office of Civil Rights actually who monitors all these things really would find the folks if they're not actually bringing in these requirements and they don't have what is called privacy and security by design built in, both at the organizational level and also at the product level. I think point number 5 is quite interesting. Harshini had shared some of the interesting work that you all are doing. I think some of you are also working on PACS. So very clearly, this is a classic case in which we have, for example, exposures happening. Sometimes we open up ports, and when we have patches sort of applied also, a lot of privacy and security, potential breaches also happen because of the fact that we're doing upgrades and maintenance work also on what we have put out there for the customers. So these are obvious scenarios that we need to really prevent, and that's the focus of privacy and security, product security at the medical device level. We have a lot of challenges, and I think the HIT team over here and the MPI, sort of startups here are trying to indeed wrestle with these challenges, and that's really wonderful. So obviously connectivity, I just spoke about the mobile connectivity and a lot of social media connectivity. So our systems are actually pretty much there out, accessible by almost anybody nowadays. So we really need to ensure that privacy and security aspects are taken care. And of course, we have a lot of information. So in the case of radiology, applications, we have a lot of images that are going around, and databases and file sizes really exponentially growing nowadays. Very clearly, there's a hospital to home sort of a situation and new care of delivery. We have, of course, a lot of computerization and apps coming into the ICU also, wherein we have a lot of monitoring happening, patient monitoring happening in the hospital and also at home. So I think very clearly, while it's all patient centric, there is a lot of information exchange that's happening, and thus a lot of scope for also breaches as we go ahead, and a lot of use cases that we may not have actually foreseen because of the simply the new way our products are being used. And I think, of course, that's the new important aspect of having IoT and big data. So we'd like to get a lot of data, analyze it, and then present it and give some insights, etc. But as we do that, we have to ensure that indeed we don't really, compromise on any of the personal data or any of the data that is not supposed to be shared in the direct way without anonymization or pseudonymization while we present these insights to the key forums. So I think compliance is really a key aspect over here. And the complexity is increased with the number of actors. So while we have several actors helping out in the healthcare systems that we have, the front office folks, the administrative folks who are there, the finance team who actually liaisons with insurance providers, etc., and of course the core folks in the hospital. We also have the clinicians who are using our systems, inputting data, images, and the sheer speciality. And as I said, all of them want things to be fast and quicker. They don't like too much of password, too much of authentication, things like that. So that is the other issue. And they're very busy. We know the support staff and nursing staff, they would like to, while they're using our system, they'll get an urgent patient call, have to run to the patient bedside. And our systems are actually exposed over there. So automatic log off and things like that are really important aspects that we look at. Of course, radiology is a key area. So a lot of connected devices actually are going together, and with the shortage of radiologists that's there in the industry, we have a lot of teleradiology happening. So these are some of the areas that we're all pretty much working on, and a lot of access required by the ancillary staff. We have medical educators, we have folks who are outside like dietitians and others who really need to access some of the patient information, some of the data, so they can actually give their we can say allied sort of prescriptions that will support the health of the patients. So that's a huge amount of complexity and actors involved. It's a huge, every actor has their own scenario, how they use the data and the system. So that's something that, increases the system designer and the architect's, view of things. And all these have to be, of course, catered to. Looking at a typical HIS and RIS integration, right? So we have this workflow where a patient comes in, gets registered, and then ultimately gets referred down to the radiology system where images are actually taken, maybe a CT or an MR, for example. And sometimes we have hard copies. Of course, now we have a lot of digitalization also happening, and reporting that happens back. And all this is stored in some of the work that you all are doing in the PACS systems that we have. A lot of data is stored there and then retrieved for diagnostic purposes and reporting purpose also, back to the referring physician and back to the patient also. So this entire workflow, while it is very simplistically put here, very clearly each stage has to be studied as part of the system that we are building or designing. And any potential risk with respect to data, security, and privacy have to be taken care. And very clearly the risk has to be minimized through the best practices of software engineering or any other controls that we can bring in as part of our product. What do we try to do in terms of privacy and security? So I think in all these systems that I just explained to you earlier, for example, the typical HIS RIS workflow that we have over here, we have a lot of personally identifying information flowing from one system to the other, and collected also. So we have a lot of sensitive information that can easily identify the patient in just one shot, like Aadhaar number in India, social security number, for example, in the US, passport information. Some medical conditions are very clearly also, for example, cancer patients typical special cases of cancer, etc., easily be, if leaked out, can really identify the patient instantly. Some non-sensitive information, of course, which can't really identify the patient on their own, like zip code and race and gender. Though, of course, if we say some cases and we point to a locality which is really sparsely populated, and we say that, hey, a female patient who has cancer in, say, Alaska, for example, that could be probably very easily identifiable. But in most cases, the non-sensitive PIA can't really identify a patient directly. So the sensitive PIA is something that we really have to take care, and that is what is called protected health information as per the US HIPAA. So these are the 18 elements that I would like to flag to the team. I'm sure many of you have already come across this, but those of you who are starting up, if you are sort of touching any of this data as part of your product development, then you need to really ensure that you are compliant with the US HIPAA requirements. So this is called the protected health information. And if we are processing any such data, if we are having privy to such data, then we need to actually ensure that we are, our product is also HIPAA compliant. So we can see very clearly that apart from the obvious, things that identify a patient, like photographs or biometrics, etc., very clearly aspects like the vehicle identifiers and license plates, and also the date of birth. These are some things that really identify the individual patient who is receiving the services, and people who don't need to know all the personal information or the protected health information of the patient should not be given more information that they need to know for the work that they're doing. So that's the golden rule, that provide information to the extent that is required for either processing the data, for doing a diagnosis, or for insurance purpose, or whatever is the purpose that is required. Only that subset of this 18 PHI fields should really be sent or exposed to the person who requires it, or to the application that requires it. Not everything, even though that could be available somewhere. I think that's the key aspect that data protection by design we have to keep in mind when we actually designing applications and products. So pretty much high-level requirements we can see are flowing in from privacy perspective. That means what was my personal information that needs to be collected correctly. So data quality is a key aspect here, and also access is very clearly to be controlled, and display is also to be controlled to the person who really needs to know, who's the care provider, or who is the person interacting with the system should be allowed to see only that information that is really required. And of course, security. So basically, the privacy, while it's a legal requirement, security is where the team over here comes in. So the folks here at MTI would really be looking at ensuring that confidentiality is ensured. Of course, the data is available. So when you look at the workflow that I just showed you, the RIS and HIS systems, at the point of use, we need to really ensure that the data is ensured, including the images, etc., as required by the procedure that we are following. And of course, integrity. So if you're storing images or storing any information, when it's actually retrieved, obviously the data has to be reliable and accurate. Moreover, so because it's going to help in, especially if it's going to help in diagnosis and treatment. So I think these are the key aspects at a high level, what you call high level requirements that have to be ensured by any of the medtech apps or products that we are producing that are actually touching upon the protected health information that I just mentioned. So drilling down further, how does this all fit in? So really, there's a legal framework. So there are lots of laws, and in the US and in Europe, we of course have clear laws that have come out with respect to data protection. And HIPAA is, of course, the US laws that are there in place, and we have to prove we are compliant to that for any products that are using the PHI. Similarly, in GDPR, all the medical information actually comes under sensitive data. So we have to be GDPR compliant for the sensitive data and handle that very carefully. And of course, on the annual is the Personal Data Protection Bill in India, where that's also going to have a huge ramification in the healthcare industry once it is passed. It's still being discussed in Parliament, And it's modeled around the GDPR of Europe, but I think it has a huge ramification here. While privacy is very clearly a fundamental right as per a recent Supreme Court ruling, the ramifications are still not really come out very clearly. Once the bill is actually approved and passed, we will know more. So clearly, we have a lot of internal requirements that are obvious that we need to have, antivirus and ransomware protection and proper vulnerability analysis with respect to any of the external threats like hackers, etc. And we also have the legal requirements that we have to fulfill, depending on the region or geography that we're going to be selling medtech product. So that's clearly the two set of requirements that drive, the internal business requirements and then the external country-specific requirements that we have to cater to. And it comes down to the fact that we have to do a usual product development, a use scenario where the user actually communicates with our medical device. We have to see what are the interfaces, who else is actually having access, of course, to the medical device, what are the interfaces, and typically the requirements that you can see at the bottom that flow down into the product are obviously very strong access control. That comes back to the point that I mentioned. Person who needs to really see and access the data only should be provided that amount of data that is really required for their work. Clearly, there should be no mix-up of the patient, so unique user identification of the patient and also of all the people who are using the system. So it can't be a common user ID and items like that. Unique identification is a must. And very clearly, the most of the PHI that I mentioned is all in electronic form now. So how is that authenticated and very clearly, password policy, all that actually comes in over here. And clearly, when we store data, when we transmit data, and the laptop case, when we have handheld devices, for example, we need to have clear policies for and features in our product for encryption, decryption, pseudonymization, etc. And I give you the case in which the nurse, the busy nurse in the hospital, has to run to a patient because somebody's pressed the buzzer. Very clearly, the system that we have over there, we have to build in some features like auto log off, so that it is sort of protected. Say within 2 minutes of me using the system, it's actually protected. And it's not as simple as that because sometimes the reports that are downloaded, those are not actually password protected. And we should ensure that those are also indeed password protected because that's also actually sensitive information of the patient. And clearly, if any data is sort of processed, if you are trying to use an algorithm to actually run some results, let's say there's a criticality index, for example, that we are using with lots of healthcare parameters that we are looking at in the ICU, for instance. Very clearly, what was the information that came in, who has authenticated it, who has actually authorized it for use, is it used for diagnostic purpose, who has deleted it, who has updated it, all this to come in very clearly in an audit trail also in our product. And clearly we also need to ensure that there's adequate security, right? So all our products are hooked to the hospital network usually, or could be on a cloud. So we need to ensure adequate network security and cyber security. So these are typical requirements. And under each of these high-level tabs that you can see here, there are detailed requirements that are best practices emanating from, HIPAA, high trust, and a few other best practices like NIST that we have in place that actually drive product features also. So we have to very clearly take care of these as product features during our product development. So that's the key takeaway that we have over here. And how do we go about the entire process? We actually look at a clear process of risk management. So the idea is that we look at all the scenarios that are possible, and we actually look at risk management and see who are the actors involved, what are the use scenarios involved. Look at all the assets that are coming in touch with our system, part of our system also. Identify all the threats and look at the vulnerabilities that are there within our system, and then come out with a clear risk profile. And we clearly have a lot of best practices like the NIST standard that we have put as an example here, that we have a clear understanding of what's the impact of this particular risk and the likelihood of it occurring. And very clearly, the impact is devastating. That's coming back to the impact. We have those 5 cases that I spoke to you about earlier, right? The breach cases that are there. The impact is always devastating. That doesn't go away. All we can do is through proper design and development best practices reduce the likelihood of occurrence. So we try to move the likelihood of occurrence from the very high BH that is depicted over here in the high areas, which is in the red zone here. Try to bring it back to the very low and the low areas purely by the best practices in product design. And of course, verify that before we actually launch the product and completely, revisit the risk analysis and the privacy, data privacy impact analysis also right through the development cycle. Because as we build the product, more and more risks, can come up. Some risks that we thought are really risks will go away. So we have to do this risk analysis throughout the product development, at least on the key stages of product development, so that we revisit these and then maybe build in some features that are really required also. So there are some best practices standards also, so specific to the software products that we have in medical devices. We have the IEC 62304, and clearly privacy and security, as I mentioned, is not only at the end where we test and see whether we are really meeting all the privacy and security requirements, but it very clearly starts from the initial planning stages itself. What are the security features that we're going to be built in? So encryption obviously is a very important one. Pseudonymization, and the auto log of audit trails. These are some of the security features that we built in right in the beginning and plan for it, and see that what is the scope of the product that we are going to come out. In version 1, what are the requirements that we're going to be implementing? Version 2, what are we ensuring, and then assuring our customers. And of course, the third step over here is to check that the requirements that we have actually thought through are actually implemented and tested. So obviously, we can test this in the initial stages, but we can do the complete testing only when the product is to a certain level of maturity, where most of the features are sort of available. Because adding a feature can also throw up a lot of security risks again, and expose privacy risks also. So clearly, we have to do some vulnerability analysis and penetration testing at the product level, and then once the product is actually at the end customer location, if it's an on-prem deployment, for example, we need to also do it at the hospital level and hospital ID and liaison with them also to see that India systems are safe and secure. And post-release, we have to validate all these security and privacy requirements prior to release, and then keep checking once it's out there, because we keep applying patches, we keep adding some features, some efficiency improvement aspects. We try to bring in the feedback of our customers also. So we keep adding features as we maintain our product in the premises. So I think that's a key aspect, that we continue doing this risk analysis, not only during the development phase, but also in the maintenance phase and up to end of life, actually. So end of life has a very interesting connotation. There's lots of data, again, that is stored in our devices in various forms. So even the hardware that is to be disposed of has to be disposed of in a proper way, so the data of the patient that we're supposed to protect, at the end of the day, does not readily fall into the hands of any person who's not supposed to really have it. So there are a lot of scenarios in each of these that we could discuss, but of course, I think this is just a bird's eye view that we wanted to provide in this session. We'd be happy to, of course, discuss any more details and specifics in the Q&A and also later. So clearly, we have important steps that we decide on the geography and the regulations that we need to have in place. We need to do privacy and security risk analysis, enhance and check whether we are indeed implementing these, and use best practices like 62304 and the other security and privacy standards that are required to ensure that our medtech product is indeed compliant. That is called ensuring privacy and security by design in the device that we put out there. So in conclusion, I think the key is to plan for security by design. So decide on what are the requirements and which country-specific regulations are really applicable, because that does differ geography by geography. And clearly bring in a proactive approach where we actually pull in all these data privacy and security requirements throughout the early in the product development, and keep updating the risk analysis throughout the development, and most importantly, post release also, because that is a scenario in which when the product is out there in the field, a lot of changes do happen, and that actually throws up a lot of vulnerabilities that can be exploited by external threat agents. And of course, having the team, sort of trained on these aspects, this sort of an awareness training and a more detailed training on the actual requirements, as I was mentioning earlier. Also, in case of any new tools that we're bringing in, new procedures that are brought in, new workflows that are brought in, all these are good, aspects to actually improve the security framework that we have put out there for the product, and constantly verifying that they're compliant with respect to the applicable regulations, and our own product security requirements is also a key aspect over here. So it will be wonderful to sort of be in touch with this team and really enable you to meet the challenging needs of your product development. And now I would throw the floor open for question and answers. I think we have sufficient time for it. Dr. Muthu had said that we should try to keep it interactive, so not too much of presentation from our side. We'd like to look at some of your specific cases and then try to provide our experience that would help you. So, Harshini, would you be able to moderate the Q&A, or shall we look it up over here?
Yes, sir. Like anything you would want to do, sir.
Yes. So from the team here, if you have anything specific, we can definitely discuss any specific, aspects with respect to privacy and security, with respect to your specific products, or any challenges that you're facing. We'll be happy to provide experience, because one is to have the frameworks and the regulations, but how do we actually get these requirements implemented in our startups? I think that's the key challenge. In a sensible way, we need to do that. So we'll be happy to share any experience and inputs that are there from your side. We'll be happy to respond to that. Dr. Muthu, from your perspective, how do you see privacy and security actually moving in the Indian context and in the startup context that you have seen so far?
My role here on this conversation is only passive, so my manager is dealing with it, so I don't want to interfere in everything. So let her manage.
Sure, Dr. Muthu, yeah, perfect.
So any queries from the participants? Anybody willing to ask questions can ask.
We need to unmute all the participants. Harshini, is that why nobody is able to speak up?
Yes, I'll check out for it.
Sure.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, this is Dr. Satish, sir, from Nandana Engineering College, Perundurai. The main what I am need is what type of this ISO factors can be included for a student to be prepared for a product engineer like that. I belongs to biomedical engineering department.
Right. Sure. So,
as your presentation says, there's some ISO 13485 out there. So we have
yes,
been now we are preparing the curriculum for 7th and 8th semester subjects for as per our regulations. So we plan to have some ISO products or standards or protocols which is going to be helpful at the time of their field while working in an environment.
Yes, absolutely. So as you rightly said, sir, the I think the important aspect is to, of course, decide on whether it's a system sort of a product that we have or a software product. That is two things. So if it's a software specific product, right, I would start with ISO IEC no 82304 and IEC 62304. Those are very apt for the medical device software context,
Okay.
And if it is more of a system product, like say a MR scanner or a CT scanner, that sort of context that has both hardware and software involved, then I would, sort of train the team on having the ISO 13485 requirements, along with 14971, which is with respect to the, safety that is required. So that is not the security and privacy, but it's more on the safety aspects. If you're wanting the students to actually focus on product security and privacy, I think it's a very good aspect to have them understand, of course, the US HIPAA requirements, the NIST risk management framework, and the GDPR requirements with respect to sensitive data, because medical, information comes under the sensitive data category. So an overview of these applicable laws, because they are the state of the art, you can say, requirements and laws that are there. That if they're going to implement these privacy and security features in a product, it will be good to actually have them understand this. But of course, it will be a package, because these things will be just a sort of tip of the iceberg. It's good that they do a project indeed in one of the startups, for example, and really understand the implementation that will give them a hands-on feel also.
Okay. Sir. Thank you.
I have. Can I ask a question,
Yeah.
please? My name is Pratishta.
Sure, Pratishta.
I'm also part of the incubator, and most of our startups are working on different applications. While they work on applications, they also use a lot of open source softwares and things that come for free, right? Which means that they are also with a lot of security problems or infringements. So, which means they're not able to actually invest. So, what would you think? How should the startup approach when they're actually weaving in their initial product or application?
Very good point. So perfect. So I think we are actually looking at leveraging a lot of open source items, and that's absolutely fine. I think any startup should really not be reinventing the wheel, and really adding value, building upon what is already there. Having said that, the open source items are actually defined as what is called SOUP. It is SOUP, right? Software of unknown provenance, it is called. So that means while the open source software is available and proven in maybe a financial domain or some other domain, it may not be proven in the medical domain. If it is proven in the medical domain in the context and intended use of our product, absolutely fine. We have no problem or no risk there. We simply use it and quote that reference. However, if it has not been used, let me give an example of a simple software like say Excel itself, right? I mean, Excel is also, probably if you put more than 1 million records in Excel, it starts really collapsing. So that means Excel is validated for a certain data, I mean, we can say record size, but beyond that, it starts collapsing. So similarly, the open source that we are bringing in, it will be used in a particular scenario. So if it is the same scenario of use that we are anticipating in our product, absolutely no problem. We can quote that and take it ahead. If it is not, then we bring it in as it's as a risk item. We say it is a software of unknown provenance. We go in through the design and put in more verification to check indeed that all these scenarios are well tested with this new open source that we have brought in, because it's in a different intended use that we are bringing in our product. And then we release after adequate controls are in place, and we satisfy ourselves indeed that it's been verified to the various use cases that we have in our product, and stated that way, in our release notes also.
Okay. So just another follow-up question. So when the startups usually start, they're usually very tight on their budgets, and the last thing that they usually think about is security. So how do you think they can weave it in within the application also? Like, what are the initial steps that they should take when they are already working on a very constrained budget?
Yes. So I think the key aspect over here is to start by thinking that security is one of the mandatory requirements. Just like how we have a good UI or anything, we have a good UX designer, and we invest in that from day one, or a good database person. So we need to have security and privacy as a requirement. So one aspect that you can of course build in is to work with partners who bring in that competence, right? I mean, if you can't afford a full-time security or privacy officer, or an engineer to work with you. You work with a few of your partners who can do that. If you can't afford to do that, also these things are frankly very well documented in the various laws. So we have to first decide on where are we shooting for. Is it the US market? Is it the European market? Is it the Russian market? Because all these have different laws actually. So we cannot sell our product in these markets without compliance to these laws. So that's the key aspect, that we decide the area and look at these laws, and these laws are actually available pretty much in the public forum. So a responsible person in the project team should study that, and without any budget, it's all openly available. You can actually make a lot of sense out of it by just reading these standards and then seeing what is applicable to you. So I think it's important to, when you're having your product development, put security as one important, privacy and security as an important pillar. And just like how you have UX database, have security as an important aspect, built in from day one itself, because we can't sell our products. And then you saw the huge liabilities and in case of any breaches, right? So we can actually, the entire one security breach can wipe out our entire reputation and product if we don't take care of it from day one.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, sir. Any other questions from the audience? I think now is the time to make sure that any questions that you might be facing in your startup or while development could be posted. Otherwise, I have another question if I can go ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I think it's very important to have interaction, and that's what.
Yes.
Dr. Muthu and Harshini are also mentioning that it's good to indeed look at all the user cases, and we can definitely add on to our experience. And I'd also request Opens to add on to the experience. Go ahead, madam.
So the other thing is the medical device rules have come out. So what do you think? I mean, it's not completely implemented right now, but how do you think it's going to change the medical device landscape in the country? Do you think it's going to help in improving the medical devices production and innovation in the country? Because it's not completely implemented, but it's definitely going to give it a push. But it's
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So I think a lot of focus over here is, as you rightly said, these aspects like privacy and security come under what is called the General Safety and Performance Requirements, GSPR they call it in the EU MDR parlance. So these are actually sort of, as I said, now becoming a norm. It's no longer a nice to have thing. It's becoming a norm, and so we have no choice but to comply. Now, this is all very good from the patient point of view, because really, we have been seeing a lot of cases in which personal data of the patient is easily available to anybody else, right? Some patients check into hospital, they are immediately contacted by several folks saying that, hey, you have this ailment, we can help out in this manner and things like that. So very clearly, it's going to help the patient. It's also going to help increase the quality of service, because the devices that we put out there, if they're compliant, patients are going to realize that they are assured of a good quality of service and security of their personal data. So I think that's going to really push it. So having said that, I can see your point of view. It's a lot of work actually to build a medical device. So that's as if you look at POTOS, 5 forces, etc. It's really the context of the industry that comes in here. It is heavily regulated. So the fact is that there's an audit trail, there are insurance providers, there are government regulations and regulators that we have to answer to. So all this has to be also ensured by our device also. So that's the balance in which we have to see how to implement. So I think the key aspect over here is to first start, don't start big bang. Look at the intended use of your product. And as any product, we have a development life cycle and we have iterations. So in the first iteration, what are we promising our customer? We may put in more features, but what we are promising as an intended use of a product could be a small subset that we probably plan to sort of release within a year. So for that, what are the applicable product security and privacy requirements? let's say we're handling only 2 PHIs, we have only 2 of those 18 fields that I mentioned. In that case, it becomes much easier. And maybe in the first instance of a product, we don't handle any of those. So in that case, it's not even a medical device, right? We may want to get into the actual analytics and things like that when our device is more stable. So we do a rev of a product and an iteration later, a couple of years later. So typically, these product development life cycles are not very short. It is long term, and we build upon the existing features. So it's very important to do this incrementally also, not try to do it big time from day one, take care of all product security and privacy requirements, because some of them are simply not applicable in the context of our product. Like to add, Mukul?
Come a long way from the systems which we used to use. So initially, the systems were more monolithic, more localized. So the data would typically remain within the hospital or maybe within a set of trusted sources. But now what has happened is it's more globalized now, and especially with the IoTs, big data coming in. So there is a lot of scope for data to basically get leaked or breached. So as you rightly asked, right? I mean, what is the effect on the kind of rules and regulations which are currently coming up? So maybe a few years back, healthcare kind of rules and regulations were not really strong, I would say, in India. But now what has happened is because of all these new changes, new technical and technological innovations happening, they're coming up with a set of very strong rules and regulations. This is basically to make sure that the people whom we are catering to here, in this case, the patients, their data is kind of properly secured. So there was a study which was done. So what it basically tells is whenever a breach happens, like let's say it happens in the financial kind of institutions. So if there are some hackers who basically steal this data and they want to sell it in the black market, in the market to other people who kind of misuse it, it was less than $10 for financial kind of data. But then again, the healthcare data basically sells for around 350 to $400. So you can just do a comparison in terms of the kind of sensitive information which the healthcare database or these healthcare applications provide. So the government also now kind of realizes the importance of all the patient data and how we have to maintain that privacy and security. So that's so what we can say is, as Rad told, is the new regulations coming in, not only in India but across the globe also. It will be much more stronger, and it will be much more kind of tailor-made or streamlined to the recent technologies which are coming up.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Over to Harshini. If
Yeah.
she might.
So any questions from the participant side now? So, sir, I would like to ask a questions on behalf of the participants. So, with increasing AI use during COVID and more tools being fast-tracked, how can the data security be managed?
Okay.
The right question. In fact, there was a study also done about how the this one COVID-19 related data, especially now what has happened is this is a global pandemic, so data is getting I mean transferred and shared between different global locations. It could be between US and India, India and Europe. So what has happened is there are a set of common rules and regulations. Like let's say HIPAA basically tells that there should be a proper access control, there should be proper encryption and decryption. So there are a set of minimal controls which must and should be followed when data is being shared. So, and also one of the other things which Rad had told, sharing the data which is required, only the minimal data which is required. So that's another thing which will need to be followed. So typically what happens is that, let's say you want to share data about COVID patients, you don't really need to share the PII, that's the personally identifiable information. You don't need to share their names, you don't need to share their specific details. So what you can do it, you can anonymize or pseudonymize it. So you can make it more generic. Like let's say so many people, maybe 100 people who are males are having this, or 200 people who are females are having this. So that it is much more difficult to pinpoint who exactly is the person who is suffering it, or I mean, it will be difficult for anybody to pinpoint the person who is actually affected by these by the disease. So there are a set of basic rules and regulations which we need to follow.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So any other questions from the participant side? Does anybody like to ask any questions now? So, okay, sir. Can we wrap up the session?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So,
Thank you so much.
sure. Thank you very
Yes,
much
sir.
for your patient hearing, and do feel free to reach out for any support that you may need or any questions you may have. My contact information is available here. Mukund and I will be happy to provide any inputs to you that will help you
Yes.
to implement privacy and security in your product. So all the very best in your product development also, and thanks for this opportunity for the interaction.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much to both the speakers and your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.